Now, over the last few weeks, John McDonald has been using his interviews around the budget to set out Labour's economic strategy, borrowing hundreds of billions of pounds for infrastructure spending, nationalising key industries like rail and water, some of that done and borrowed money too, also buying back PFI contracts, another tens of billions of pounds. But the Shadow Chancellor has repeatedly refused to put a number on what all that would cost and exactly how much more it would cost in debt repayments. Just look at this.
How much is that going to cost?
Right. What we've said, and this is very clear-cut, and I said it before, when you take them over... you don't need a number.
By how much does the economy need to go for your plans to work?
Let me just go through this, because people need to understand what we're saying, because a lot of figures have been bandied around.
I'm just looking for one figure would do me.
I'll give you a figure.
All right.
What we're saying is we invest £250 billion over a 10-year programme, so about £25 billion a year.
How much do we now spend on paying the interest in our national debt?
A lot.
How much?
Well, I'll give you the figure, and I'll send you a note on the figure.
You don't know?
Well, I know the figure, but I haven't got it in front of me. I'll send it. You tell me now.
If you were elected today, how much above 48 billion would we pay to service our debt next year?
Well, it's absolutely minimum, because it would be returned rapidly to you. And that's about investment over a period. Well, I'm telling you, it pays for itself.
Have you got a number for us now, roughly what the interest bill would be?
No, let me explain to you, Robert, if I can. The point I'm trying to get at is that we do not want figures bandied around about future investment interest rates at a later date that will then be used to frighten people off from properly supporting investment.
We all understand that the figure will shift depending on the share price and other factors. But why don't you just tell us how much it would cost right now?
Because the debate is about whether or not it is cost effective.
All I'm asking for is how much would it cost today to do what you're proposing at some point?
It would be cost-free because it pays for itself.
Well, Andy McDonald, you are the Shadow Transport Secretary, and I assume that a lot of the infrastructure spending that your Shadow Chancellor talked about would fall into your area. We all want to have a better transport infrastructure. But we also need to know how much more we're going to borrow. Now, you're going to borrow 250 billion over a period of time for infrastructure. You're going to borrow to nationalise. That could be another couple of hundred billion. And you're going to take the PFI contracts back under state control. That's another couple of hundred billion. So roughly how much a year extra would you have to borrow to do all this?
Well, in transport, we will bring the railway back into public ownership, and that will cost us zero, Andrew.
That's because you'll wait for the leases to expire.
Yeah, and we'll stop giving £2 billion bailouts to Stagecoach and Virgin like they did last week and tried to give us mists and mirrors about reversing beaching
But you won't be able to do that with water.
The country off.
You won't be able to do that with water because it's assets you're buying there, and you won't be able to do that with energy. So when you add it together, how much extra borrowing will you need to do?
It's impossible to say. Can you tell me what the cost of the water companies will be in 2022?
Well, I can tell you what the cost is now because they've got a market cap and there could be an election next year. You're on an election footing. You could be implementing this next year. So you must have a ballpark figure to know you're going to have to go to the bond markets to borrow all this. We're already borrowing a ton of money. We've got 1.8 trillion of national debt. Andrew, how much more would you borrow?
Well, you can't put a figure on that at the moment. It's not possible to do it. What you do...
So it's a menu without prices?
You're acquiring... Well, the point being you're acquiring an asset and you know that you've got that, so it's a neutral transaction, and you're getting the income from that asset. You know, people are getting sick and tired of getting ripped off by energy companies and saying which gas is better. EDF, does that smell any better than Scottish Power or what have you? They want the gas coming into their cooker. They want to switch the light on. That's not more pretty than the other one.
You may be acquiring the asset, but you're borrowing to acquire that asset, and I'm asking you how much will you have to borrow to do so?
You can't say. John's given a very clear answer.
He's not given an answer at all.
He's addressed it absolutely fundamentally. It's the principles of acquiring the asset, and it'll cost what it costs. And it's a question of negotiation at the relevant time. We're not in government, Andrew.
No, but you could well be in government within the next 6 months.
Yes.
That's why your party's on an election footing.
Yeah.
So at the very least, you're going to borrow 25 billion a year for infrastructure spending. It could be another 20, 25
Upon
billion
which you
for
get
the
a return. So if you're investing in infrastructure, you know that you get a benefit-cost ratio that grows our economy, grows our tax
but grows the
receipts.
economy is the overall growth in the economy. You don't get that money back.
Well, of course
no, you don't. You don't get the money back into the government
into
coffers.
the Treasury. Of course it does.
For all the economic growth.
But if people being employed, being more productive, of course
But
that
how
has
do
a
you know
benefit.
it will cover the cost? You still have to cover the cost of borrowing.
Well, you do, but you've also got an income stream from the very assets that you've acquired. So it works through.
But with that income stream, on all these industries you said to nationalise, you said the consumer's being ripped off.
Yeah.
So you're going to cut prices. That will reduce the income stream.
Well, don't you think
for a start?
hold on. A good idea.
Yeah, but you cannot slash prices, increase investment, and pay the interest on the debt. How could you do that?
Lifting people out of inequality and poverty.
Answer the question.
That's the fundamental. When people are going through and they're getting ripped off at every
now you're
single
just falling back on
No,
rhetoric. I'm
not.
asking you.
No, it's more than rhetoric.
No,
This
it is just
fundamentally
rhetoric
important.
because everybody will be poorer if you can't finance this debt and you can't get the bonds away. So I ask again, how can you slash prices as you've promised to do, increase investment, and generate the revenues that will finance and service the debt? How can you do that?
If you don't have shareholders to obey and serve and pay out massive dividends to people, you've got an asset in that hand. You've got the borrowing to acquire the asset, and the revenue
Andy
stream
McDonald,
comes in. It's not difficult.
You'll have bondholders. You'll have bondholders whose debt you will have to service.
Yes.
And if you cannot do that well, or you issue too many, the bond prices will collapse and they will dump the bonds. So you have to service the debt.
You've got to get it right. You've got to get the price of it right.
Really?
But that's why we can't get in that discussion here and now about what the precision of this is going to be. It's impossible. But the basic principle is utterly sound, and it's one that we'll follow in government.
Our viewers will decide.